Hi everyone, today we're in Watertown at the corner of Avon and Belmont Street, and we're at the site of what was a very haunted house in the 1860s. As the story goes, the original owner of the house was nicknamed the Colonel, and he and his family lived here in a blissful, happy lifestyle until they decided to get a governess for the children. The governess arrived, she was a beautiful young woman, and shortly thereafter she and the Colonel took up. They had an affair. And eventually the wife had had enough of their long rides into the country while she was stuck home with the children, and the wife left and the husband fell into despair. The poor Colonel was despondent, and eventually the mistress left, the governess left. The wife returned, and life returned to normal for a while until the Colonel's niece came to act as the next governess. And the Colonel and the niece then took up, and history repeated itself. The wife left, the Colonel became despondent, then eventually the niece left, and suddenly, even though he had been financially devastated by this, suddenly the Colonel appeared with a huge sum of money. Nobody knew why. The wife was gone, both of the mistresses were gone, the children were off living with their grandmother, and the Colonel was here alone with this newly found amount of money. Strangely enough, at the same time, a local wealthy watch peddler had gone missing. Nobody put two and two together, and the Colonel died shortly thereafter. And the house here on the corner stood empty for a number of years, and then slowly families started moving in, but none of them would stay more than a couple months because they would leave due to an unholy racket caused by ghosts in the house. It was a terrible haunting filled with slamming doors and scraping in the basement and terrible noises. Eventually a man bought it. He owned a farm nearby, and this abutted his property, so he bought this house as a home for his foreman. And his foreman, a man named Mr. King, moved in with his wife, and they were brave. They weren't afraid of anything. Ghosts didn't scare them, and they even rented out parts of the house to other families who heard the noises, and they left terrified. But the Kings stayed. One night, Mr. and Mrs. King were asleep in their bed, and they heard the doorbell ring downstairs. And they came down, opened the front door, and they saw a carriage that was pulled by a white horse. At that moment, the wind blew out their candle, and when they relit it, the carriage was gone. But as they were going back into the house, they saw the ghost of a beautiful woman in a silk dress headed upstairs, and for the rest of the night they could not sleep due to the noises in the house, scraping sounds, weeping, pounding. It was a ruckus. This became so much of a tourist trap that hundreds of people came to see this haunted house. One night they finally got a psychic to come, and the psychic met with the ghost of the woman, who turned out to be the niece, and the niece basically told on the Colonel and said the Colonel had killed the peddler and taken his money. And from that day forward, supposedly the house wasn't quite as haunted as it had been before. Things settled down after that. That house is long gone. I don't know if any of the houses in this neighborhood now have any remnants of the Colonel and his mistresses and all their activity, ghostly wise. We'll never know. But that's today's ghastly dispatch. We'll see you tomorrow for the next one.